Think of the people in your life, the one whose words you borrow, whose mannerisms you imitate, whose opinions matter to you. These are the ones with whom you share your heart. Now, typically, we would want to surround ourselves with those from a natural perspective who just make us better people. But the real question is whether they make us better disciples. And that's not always as obvious as one might think. Now, today's gospel presents us with this character of Bartimaeus, and it's the time now of his visitation. So here's this man, as the gospel describes, he's blind, and therefore, by default, he's poor because it's not like he can really get a job that earns a lot of money. And he's planted on the side of the road. And so what we have here, what's meant to be presented to us, is this image of this man who in his whole life, he's just stuck. He's not going anywhere. And now, today, this amazing guy, Jesus, is visiting his town. And not only visiting his town, he's walking on Bartimaeus' very street. This is an opportunity, and it might not ever come back again. Now, inside of Bartimaeus, you get this sense, right? This is a man who deep down is a man of desire. There is a longing within him for something more. Not just to see with his eyes, but when he says to the Lord, I want to see, you can feel within him he wants to see with his whole being, to find meaning and purpose, his place in life's plan. And he knows somehow that Jesus can give that to him. This is his chance. And just as Bartimaeus, within him, everything is crying out for Jesus, what should capture our attention is that everyone around him is trying to silence him. Here he is, he's reaching for redemption, fighting to rise from his circumstance, and everyone around him is just trying to push him right back to where he's been, where in their mind, I suppose, he belongs. That is very striking. But if you rest with that for a minute, you'll see it's actually not that uncommon, particularly in the spiritual life. One example of that would be Teresa of Avila. She's a saint from the 16th century, and she was a Carmelite at a time when the Carmelite monastery had really fallen into mediocrity. Yet, at a certain point during her religious life, her illnesses became so pronounced, and she struggled with them so much that it actually incapacitated her for a long time. And this afforded her the opportunity to really return to mental prayer, to meditation. And eventually that mental prayer became ecstasies from Jesus. And so here's Jesus. He's visiting Teresa in this way. And in this space, he starts calling her to more, to greater penance for sins, and a better understanding of what sin really is, to a restoration of her religious fervor, to a renewal in her commitment to meditation from this moment forward, and to an undivided love for him alone. She recognized, and he revealed to her, that she kind of had one foot in the world and one foot in the gospel and was straddling. And he said, just stop doing that. Don't love me with part of you. Love me with all of you, because I'm so ready to give all of me to you. Now, with this invitation came this entire expansion of heart, that she didn't receive these things as imposed on her from without. She desired them. She was energized to pursue them. Who do you think met her with the greatest resistance? It was her religious sisters, the people around her. Teresa starts seeking reform for herself and for her community, but they wanted complacency. They wanted things to stay as they've been. And so it was, the sisters in the convent, they pushed back. Then the lay people in the town of rank and influence mounted this whole campaign against her because they were upsetting their way of life as they understood the monastery was supposed to be. In fact, it got so bad, Teresa's own religious superiors came to her and said, under the vow of obedience, we order you to stop what you are doing. Remain in your place. Now, that's the moment that all of us, we have to make a choice. Like, have you ever been on retreat, or maybe you went to a conference, maybe you went on a pilgrimage with Father Loomis to Italy, and you get this big grace, and you realize that when you go back home, you can't go home the same. Things have to change. And then everyone around you pushes back. That's when we have to make a choice. We either stay where we are, or we fight for what God is calling us to be. Now, the gospel tells us that Bartimaeus fights. It says that even when the crowd is telling him to just remain silent, he calls out all the more. He just casts them aside. And because he did so, his eyes were opened and his potential was unlocked. And then he found a new crowd of people, those who were disciples, because it says that he rises from where he is and he follows Jesus on the way. And who's with Jesus? Peter, James, John, Thaddeus, Nathaniel, right? All these characters. That's the company he got to keep. Teresa of Avila, she never disobeyed her superiors. She just went above them. And she got the support of Rome. And because of that, she went on to be one of the greatest reformers in the church. And this is during the time of the Protestant Reformation, just for context. She went on to be one of the greatest mystics and is now labeled a doctor of the church. That would have never happened if she listened to the people around her. And so she ended up making new associations. Some of them went on to become saints themselves, like St. John of the Cross, who then reformed his own Carmelite monastery. And these people encouraged her in her fervor to follow Jesus on the way without compromise. Which takes us back to where we started. Think of the people in your life whose words you borrow, whose mannerisms you imitate, the ones with whom you share your heart. Do they push you to the holiness that God has called you to and the peak of your spiritual potential? Or would they rather just keep you right where they found you?